welcome Sean Zak. Let's get started. Welcome back to Door County. And also, as I understand it, to your home turf here at Horseshoe Bay, which played a role, and we'll get to that. Not yet. Get us started with a bit about your beginnings. You were born and raised here, and tell us about some of that.
Well, some of you definitely know that story. But I was born and raised in Sturgeon Bay, and went to Sturgeon Bay High School. Some of my teachers are in the crowd tonight, which is really cool. Like the entirety of this event is very full circle, because then in high school I started working at this golf course. They kind of kept me up the hill with the golf stuff. They didn't want us down here screwing around at the beach club. But this is the place where I think I really got infected by the golf bug, if you will. It's this kind of not so fictitious thing that they say in the game. It grabs competitive people and like never lets go of them. And I imagine you guys have gotten caught by the golf bug before. And so Horseshoe like really kind of grabbed that because my parents don't play golf. My brother struggles to play golf. There wasn't a lot of like, you need to play golf, Sean. But the sport grabbed me, and it still hasn't let go of me. And it's taken me a lot of cool places like Scotland, and occasionally brings me back to Door County. So this is all incredibly special. So thank you all for being here up front. I know some of you have come a decent ways to be here. And so more than anything, this is like super cool for me. A ton of familiar faces. Some people I've never met. I mean, Keith in the red, I just met him. He brought me some Scottish iron brew. So he brought me home in different ways. So this is really great. Thank you.
Do the Scots do poutine, or is that just
Poutine?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
Not poutine, the poutine, the
I don't think so.
in Irish. They don't need to hear me.
Okay.
You went to Sturgeon Bay High School. We've got teachers here who tell stories about that. And you were involved in athletics there?
Yeah, but not golf. That's the thing. People in the industry just assume, oh, you played golf forever, but it was baseball, basketball, football at Sturgeon Bay. And the baseball part of that makes golf difficult at times, because you play enough baseball, and then the swings are just similar enough that you can, if you're a pitcher, you don't hit all the time, then golf can be really easy. But if you're a hitter, the swings can deceive you, I guess.
From what age, when you started getting interested in golf? You were pretty young?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, so my dad's dad, Grandpa Zak, for some of you who probably met him, native of Door County, northern Door County. He worked at a golf course down in Winneconne. It's called Lake Breeze. You would pass it on the highway, and not many people go there. It's a very, honestly, just a sea-level average golf course, but that's where Grandpa Zak worked, and I would go and visit him in the summertime for a week at a time, and I'd wake up with Grandpa Zak's scrambled eggs and bacon, and then Grandpa would take me to work for the day, and he would do his thing, picking golf balls off the range and telling people that they're taking too long to play, and I would just have complete run of the place. And that's where I, in addition to this place, I really just felt like this sport is impossible. I'm so frustrated, but I can't get enough of it. And what was really cool is I actually went back to Lake Breeze in June or May for the first time in forever. And the owner happened to be there, and then one of the pro shop attendants happened to be there, and they remembered my grandpa. They're like, oh yeah, he was a stickler for people being on time and golfing the right way. And I didn't write about it, I should have, maybe I still will, but it was like, it's one of these generational games where you remember people that you played with and people that taught you how to play, and the fact that they still remember Grandpa Zak there was really, really cool. And so
You have something on your website, a memory that I came across once,
gosh, I wrote
but
that
then
a
I
long time
couldn't
ago.
find it again. But it was very affectionate and very, you got the impression that that was the man that kind of made a big difference to you.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's who the book is dedicated to. Him being the kind of golfer, and then my grandmother being a writer. it always made a lot of sense. Like, these were two people, my parents' parents, that I connected with in a way that led me in this very obvious golf writing path. That doesn't make sense when it's happening until you write a book and you're like, oh yeah, well duh. Like, you were always on this path. Maybe.
And you were how old when you first started with Grandpa Zak?
Probably 10 or 11.
Pretty young.
Pretty young, yeah.
Do you think that, I mean, we hear the kids are in sports and it's the, football, basketball, the team stuff. And we hear that that's a good thing for them growing up, it's good citizenship. Does golf bring that same thing to a young kid learning, and is it good for them?
Yeah, in certain ways. I do think that golf for young kids can be a little tricky, because if it's at a country club and it's, forced upon you in certain ways, you might get too focused on it, and it's a tough sport because you're all by yourself, right? And like mentally, it can lead to a lot of people who get really hypercritical of themselves. So that would be the darker side of things. However, the sport makes you be honest with yourself. It makes you aware of the rules, and you always sign a scorecard with your first and last name saying, this is what I shot today. And like, honor and honesty are two things that probably this sport teaches more than a lot of other sports or team sports. And I just think that is clearly quite important as you grow up.
When I was doing the research on you and poking into your life, I won't tell the high school stories either. I came across a program at Peninsula Golf Course called First Tee. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah.
Okay, because that sounded like a really cool way to.
The First Tee is great. It's probably the biggest youth charitable run organization in the sport. There's a First Tee chapter up here in Door County, but there's one that I live by in Chicago. They're kind of all over the place, and it's a great place for people to give their money to, but also to get involved. And I think that's one of the things that you grow older, you grow old within a certain sport or expertise, and you start to look at, okay, well, how are we replenishing the people within this sport? And the First Tee is definitely one of them.
Cool. Back to Horseshoe Bay, you told us that you seldom got in here, so I hope you're taking advantage now.
Yeah.
What was the impact of golf here? I mean, you got to shoot a lot of golf? Is that correct?
Play.
Play.
It's okay. Don't worry. Yeah, so I grew up playing Cherry Hills, Idlewild, the Orchards, a lot of these public courses in Door County, and Horseshoe is private. And Matt's wife, Lauren, literally helped sponsor my first round of golf here at the private club. And I was like, wow, this place is special. I want to keep coming back here. And then like a month later, I'm like, Lauren, get me a job there, please. And then she helped do that too. So that was the beginning of it. And they needed me to valet cars and wash clubs and all that, kind of outside dirty stuff. But they offered me free golf, a lot of free golf. And they also offered a bunch of members who had gone through their lives and learned a lot of things. And you can, as a 17, 18-year-old, network with the kind of people who you want to become in some ways. And it's not just me, right? It's a number of other people that did the exact same job that you just kind of are infiltrating because they're allowing you some of these higher circles that can help you out in one way or another. They can write you reference letters. They can help get you jobs, and it's not all about that, but that was part of it, and it took up a chapter in the book because you establish relationships with people that they don't just end when you leave Horseshoe Bay, and that's one of the beautiful things about this sport is, look, my grandpa taught me, and I'll probably end up teaching hopefully my grandkids someday. It's this generational thing that one of the members that we got so close with at Horseshoe Bay, he treated us like his children, and once a year, every year, he would invite us out to Denver to play golf with him. And it's like, man, I didn't know you 10 years ago, but now we're like golf friends, and we don't have to have any other connections really besides that.
That's super. So now you're 17 or 18, and you're at Horseshoe Bay. But there's another path that's calling to you, which I maybe Grandma Zak has her little hand there.
Yeah.
So how did the journalism thing come about and decide that you
gosh.
wanted to follow it?
You know who always asked me that was my sister, and she's like, "Why? How did you know? How did you know that you wanted to do this?" And I would tell her I didn't, but I think you start seeing tokens of maybe it being obvious. Like, so Grandma Zora, my mom's mom, she was a writer for the Oshkosh Northwestern, and she was just always bringing newspapers. Whenever time she came up, she was bringing newspapers because my dad was such a voracious reader. And there's these pictures of me laying down on the living room floor on the carpet with the sports page just splayed out. And I'm like 9 years old, just like eating up these statistics. And that's like a pretty decent sign. And Grandma was bringing me to the Northwestern to meet the sports writer there. And so again, you look back and it's like, oh, it's actually pretty obvious you ended up maybe doing what you should have been doing. But I truly look back actually to the college writing class I took with Holly Michael. You were in that, weren't you? And I thought that class was the first time that a teacher told me, no, I think you're actually pretty decent at this, which is like, I've learned is the only thing that a teacher needs to tell you, is like that kind of validation. Oh, I can be decent at this, I can be good at this. And she said, Sean, I think you're probably best when you're writing about sports. I had written about some sports thing. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing that. And she let me just run free. And so graduated from Surgeon Bay and then went to Wisconsin and started doing the same thing. And it doesn't seem like a sliding doors moment, you know, when it's happening, but in hindsight, it's like, wow, the power of a teacher believing in you can really be a fork in the road that didn't seem like one, and then wow, you're off doing all these other things.
As a grandma, we just had an example of that with my son in high school, and a teacher said just the right thing, and all of a sudden this kid who hated compositions is, you know. I hope you noticed the sign at the entry where we have the picture of you.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
reading
Wow.
newspapers. So there are no secrets in Dark County.
You've done your research.
Yeah. So were you writing, you wrote for the Pulse on golf. Was that when you were in college?
So I had an internship for 3 months at the Door County Advocate. That was with Corey Mallion, looking over everything I was doing. I wrote 4 articles, struggled like crazy to do that. He helped me in certain ways. He was the first person to ever send something back to me and say, this is not good enough, which is like a wake-up call, but everyone needs to have that wake-up call. And so then the next summer, it was the Peninsula Pulse. Miles Danhausen was deeply involved in kind of getting that job for me. Cam Fuller did it before me. Cam doesn't, you know, if you guys know Cam, he's not a writer, but he's just addicted to golf. And so he was compiling the golf page before me and passed down a lot of things. And so, yeah, I mean, you would call that, with all due respect, like truly like single A baseball. And then it was that stuff though that got me my internship at Golf Magazine, which is probably the most important email I sent and then received in my career. And it's I'll try to make a quick story, but I sent an email as a struggling to find an internship junior at UW to the head of sales at Golf Magazine in their like Midwest branch. His name is John Preschlack. And John had, in the Chicago suburbs, recently had his father-in-law's landscaping done by my dad's cousin. So one of the Zocs, yeah, like ridiculous. One of the Zocs, and he's like, he saw that 3-letter last name and was like, wait, did that guy's dad's cousin do that? And I was like, yeah, and then that was it, that's all it took. Plus like 1 or 2 examples of my work. He sent it to the editor-in-chief of Golf Magazine, who turned enough of a blind eye to it to say like, yeah, like let's give this kid a $10 an hour internship in New York City. And we're off and running. Like, you know, there's a good bit of your life that happens that is lucky for stuff like that.
So you dropped the cap and gown and
Yeah, that's probably how my parents saw it. Like, get me out of here, I'm going to New York. But I truly fell in love with the pace of New York, and I really fell in love with magazine journalism, which in many ways like doesn't exist, at least as it used to. But I just thought there was such power in telling people that really care about a specific niche thing, something that they have not seen before, had not heard before, and that's what magazines do a lot of. It's kind of like culture setting in golf world, in, it could be People Magazine or Entertainment Weekly. All those brands were under the same house at Time Inc. And I was just obsessed with it. And so that plus a very, very fun city to be in your 20s, and spent a good bit of time out east.
Jumping ahead a minute, because I want to go back, I think, but how did you get from New York, now you're based in Chicago, was that?
That was a COVID pandemic stroke of luck. Mostly, it feels so obvious in hindsight, but it's like, we are all writers, we are all just at the disposal of Wi-Fi. We don't need to be living and paying Manhattan rent to write about golf. And so COVID, for better or worse, really taught us that, you can do this much more remote, you can do it more mobile than ever before. And I made the request. Well, first off, COVID happened and Connie and Troy were like, you need to be home immediately. Come live in the basement and stream, which I did. But that was nice in some way, because I just called home and I said, look, I've been doing the job now for 3 or 4 or 5 months without any blip, in the same way that everybody who did it remotely. And they said, yeah, why don't you stay there? And it's been a benefit for our whole brand, because someone moved to Minneapolis, someone moved to Seattle, someone moved to Oakland, and we spread out in a way that makes sense, because golf tournaments happen everywhere, every weekend. And so when tournaments come to Chicago, Sean, you can be there. Chicago's, a major hub. You can be anywhere soon.
When you started, I have no memory anymore. When you started, was online stuff as big as it is now? Because golf.com is a big thing, and you contribute a whole lot to it. But was it going like that when you were
When I first started, it seems crazy, but 2013, the summer of 13, we would basically publish probably 1 story per day on the website. And during the Masters this year, we'll publish 40 or 50 stories a day. And so that's a 12-year span, and it kind of shows where reading consumption has gone and how people have had to fill a need, or to fill supply to meet the demand. And so yeah, it's shifted and it continues to shift, but it's a fun. The fact that it's shifting makes you be agile, and I think that it's engaging.
Well, it's all engaging. Now I'm talking as someone who doesn't know which end of the golf club.
That's okay.
And so I've gotten quite get my feet wet learning and reading stuff. So I've read things on golf.com, and if you guys haven't paid much attention there, I really recommend it. I mean, Sean's a good writer in print, but he's excellent online and in interviews with golf luminaries. And you really are. You're a very good interviewer.
Thank you.
You listen, and you follow up, and you bring out things in people.
Well, I appreciate that. I literally I teach a class at Marquette. It's called sports writing, and just this week we've been talking about interviewing. And the first thing I say is, like, to do a good interview, you have to be a very active listener, because you can do all the prep you want, and that'll basically lead to all these little barriers where if you want to jump to the next question, you're going to have to get someone else there with you. But they have given you all these types of context for follow-up questions. And if you're an active listener, those are little places you can bird walk to for more information.
Don't you hate it if you're watching someone do an interview and the interviewer says something and they don't follow up, and it's like
Totally. Yeah, there's a skill set there, and you're doing a great job. You're not
it's a very large type. But you do well, and I'm impressed with it. And one of the things I wanted to know about that is you get the opportunity to gauge these people who are stars in golf, but to learn and exhibit what they have going on, to see what they're like. Have you impression on you, not for the golf style of the art, but for the person?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to Scott Brunswick about this before we started, but pro golfers, every day of their life are stopped constantly to shake hands, to have a small chat, to take a selfie, and Scott gets the occasional selfie down at Hilton Head every April. And the golfers that I really am drawn to are the people who have no problem with all of those little interruptions to their day, because they realize that there is a connection to be made in every one of those conversations. And like Justin Thomas took a photo with Scott in April, and I know JT a little bit, and I know that he is like uber famous, and he's taken a selfie with him twice, and then this year he won the tournament just a couple days later, and like that is a memory for Scott forever. Truly forever. And he sent it to me. Like I almost wrote about it for our website, because it's those kind of connections, I think, far more human, extremely relatable, and so much of their life is not relatable. But if they can bring themselves down in those little moments, that really kind of makes me like them a lot more.
Now I've lost.
That's okay.
Because you can never.
Because I'm talking too long?
Yeah. I think that I have a lot more questions I'd like to ask, but we want them to
Q&A
ask
with
them.
the group?
Yeah, but do you want to read a section? Of the
I can.
book?
I don't have a book copy on me, so I mean, like, here we go. I've not done this part of the things before, so.
And I know
Read.
I didn't even get into the book with you, but I figured
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions out here for people.
Well, you asked me the other day what part of the book I would consider reading. It's a good book. It's not a New York Times bestseller, but I promise you you'll have fun with it, because I think it's just a fun, meandering journey. And this part might not be quite as fun, but it has a connection to Horseshoe Bay. So we'll just read it, and hopefully that can not take so long reading it. Yep. Let's see. Just as I started getting comfortable, my summer hit a snag. I lived out a lovely Tuesday in mid-June, was about to shut the laptop for the night when inbox, 9:47 p.m., subject line, Jim Bashleben passes away. Sean, you may have heard by now, but the great Jim Bashleben passed away yesterday. Jim is a member of Horseshoe Bay. I know you are a friend of his, as am I. It was sudden and painless, and I don't really know much more than that right now. Started having some dizzy spells and such maybe 3 weeks ago. I was looking forward to a round with him next week at Colorado Golf Club. I wish us all the happiness that Bash found and shared with us. This is also page 87 if you guys have a copy on your lap. I had not heard the news. I was alone in my little condo and overcome with disbelief. One of my favorite golfers in the world had died at 74 of sudden cardiac arrest, 1 month before his 50th wedding anniversary. That the news arrived via email made it even more staggering. We cloak ourselves in a security blanket when we're at work. That tiny red notification bubble pops up and there is rarely any alarm. For me, it might be a mindless work assignment with the photos that we'll choose for the cover story. Not an industry acquaintance emailing about the death in my golf family. How do you shut the laptop and sleep after that? You don't. I stared into the corner of my bedroom for most of an hour. For the first time, St. Andrews felt extremely far from home. For a 30-year-old, I'd spent too much time thinking about death. It always seemed to arrive right when life began to feel simple, as though it's some binding course correction toward neutral. I fidgeted anxiously over the idea on my flight across the pond. What would I do if, say, my best friend's mom died while I was golf gallivanting in the UK? I was being selfish, hopeful that nothing would interrupt my summer of blissful dreams. And when that plane landed in Scotland, Jim Bashleben was one of the first people to text me. Love your comment today, he wrote. It was about LIV Golf. Lots of money, DJ, but maybe limited options in the future. With enough money, maybe he doesn't care. Hope you're well and enjoying your new remote digs. Bash. It took me 5 days to respond because communication can be a weakness of mine. When I finally did respond, it took him just 2 minutes to reply because communication was a strength of his. Beautiful spot, great courses, enjoy your stay, he said. We had met in 2008 at Horseshoe Bay Golf Club in Egg Harbor. I was the 16-year-old shaggy-haired kid running around as a bag boy, minimum wage plus tips. Bash was the 60-year-old early retiree, playing golf in the afternoons with his friends and watching the sunset over the lake with his wife, Debbie, in the evenings, truly living his best life. Bag boys hustled around like Santa's elves to make sure everything was just so in membership. We valeted their cars, addressed them exclusively by last name, carried and cleaned their clubs, looked after their grandchildren, shined their shoes, tossed away their trash, whatever could keep them from lifting a finger. They had paid tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes much more for these memberships, so some felt very entitled to that Plaza Hotel pampering. Bash did not want that. The best members didn't care for it. He did not want to be called Mr. Bashleben, just Bash. He didn't want us sprinting around to clear the putting green of golf balls left behind. He'd rather hang out and chat so he could pepper us with questions. What we wanted to major in, where we wanted to go for college, what our career goals were, where our girlfriends worked for the summer jobs. Bash gained happiness from communicating with those around him in a way that he was destined to love this game, which plants you next to friends and family and strangers for hours at a time. When the local newspaper showed up to write a story about Horseshoe Bay Golf Club, he was the member that they interviewed, and not a single person was surprised. Rather than sleep, I dove back into the archives of my texts with him. He was the rare friend who was in my life exclusively because of golf. Were it not for golf, we would have never met. It was how we stayed in touch. Him thinking that he was keeping tabs on me, the world-traveling golf writer, but really it was golf that helped me keep tabs on him. He was a marshal at the Solheim Cup, and the one rubbing elbows with Bryson DeChambeau when they shared the same physio. When COVID struck, Bash was on the tail end of a buddy's trip across New Zealand, a once-in-a-lifetime boondoggle. But he and his wife Debbie were in their 70s and particularly susceptible to the coronavirus. They just wanted to get home, drop the bags on the floor, and lock the door behind them, but it was actually safer to stay abroad. So they rented a villa on a golf course and played golf every single day. It just took life in stride. After the Bashes left Wisconsin to be closer to their grandchildren in Colorado, Bash quickly invited me and two other former bag boys, this is Nick Van Dries and John Parent, to visit his new stomping grounds, Colorado Golf Club. Meals, golf, and accommodations are covered, Bash said. Just tip your caddies. He rolled out a 54-hole red carpet, ordered hats emblazoned with Caddy Bash 2018, and customized a head cover that would serve as the official Caddy Bash trophy. Nick Van Dries won, unfortunately. He wasn't competing, he was just officiating, riding in the cart and catching up with his golf grandkids, asking the same questions he did a decade earlier. No other sport does it better, that generational cross-pollination of ideas and stories and goals and insights. You often don't notice it until it's over. We didn't know how good we had it. My first invite to play the old course arrived the afternoon of that crushing email. Fancy a game Thursday night on the old, 6 p.m. went the text from Lori Watson, the head of engagement at the St. Andrews Links Trust. I was getting my first crack at a dark time. When I set out for my 1-mile trek across town, bag on my back, I texted Nick and Johnny. Teeing off on the old course in a half hour. Bash will be with you, Nick replied immediately. Nick is a Bash-like communicator. 9 days earlier, I had written somewhere on golf.com that if the golf gods exist, they must hang out at the corner of Golf Place and the Links, two roads that create the 90-degree corner of the old course's finishing hole. That's where old Tom Morris grew up, filling his wheelbarrow with sand from the nearby beach to create the slopes and fairway humps to challenge golfers back in the 1800s. It's where he died, too, just around the corner. If Bash had anywhere to look down from, it would probably be right here. I met Lori on the tee a couple minutes before 6, which is the only way to really do it. Driving range session, who needs that? Float down the same steps as Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus and millions of other golfers before you. Stick your peg in the ground, uncork the stiffness in your body with just one practice swing, and take your lash at it. Lori paired up with one of his longtime friends, Steve Moore, and I was teaming up with Gary Payne, the new sports editor at The Telegraph. What media jobs lack in their year-end bonuses and lavish salary structure, they greatly make up for it in perks. St. Andrews' first hole, alongside its 18th, with nothing separating the two, creates what many call the widest fairway in the world. The second cut on any side is often pavement. People miss it, but you shouldn't, no matter how stiff you are. I damn near missed it on this day, tugging my driving iron into the far left corner, just short of the Swilken Burn, the most perfect hazard in the world. It snakes all the way from the North Sea, rips across the first green, and then continues out of town 2 miles into the countryside, ending on random farmland. The entire way, this burn measures maybe 10 feet across, just broad enough to gobble up golf balls from any angle. With about 140 yards left downwind, I fatted a gap wedge, fluffed it into the air in a way that I knew it was bound for the burn. I looked down immediately, seeing a crater of turf much bigger than I intended. Then I looked back up to watch for an inevitable splash. But seemingly on command, a gust of wind grabbed my ball. The breeze altered its angle of descent as it fell, planting it on the short side of the crevice with a couple feet to spare. The concrete turf hadn't received much for rain and sent my ball back into the air over the other side, safe and dry on the edge of the green. I wasn't even sure I could trust my eyes, but I didn't bother taking a second glance. I was standing in the way of golfers playing the 18th, so I grabbed my bag and I hustled up to the green, not even mentioning the incident to the group. I two-putted for an opening par, no questions asked. The pace was sluggish that night. Every group ahead of us seemed to be grinding out a score and also posing for a magazine photo shoot on the Swilken Bridge. That comes with the territory, but that's why the Links Trust feels obligated to tell those people who take the dark times you might not finish. Hit and hope, I say. And listen, if you're lucky, it'll be a night of the gloaming, where the setting sun streaks across the landscape in such a way that for about 30 minutes, 10 p.m. looks like noon. The entire course is caked in a golden haze, reflecting extra light off the hotel windows. Then, as the sun bends over the horizon, the light lingers in the clouds. You can see it in photos, but it must be experienced in person to properly understand the meaning of a Scottish summer. When the pace gets slow, the gloaming can carry dark times to a surprising finish. We just weren't very lucky. The only lights touching the course when we reached the 18th tee were the street lamps up the right and the old course pavilion along the left. It looked like a golfy fly trap, with more overnight golfers buzzing around its halo. In between the lights was the R&A clubhouse. Our line off the tee was this massive Roman numeral clock on its exterior. Lori and Steve had closed Gary and me out on the 16th hole, so it was all pride at this point. A bogey 5 would keep my score from brimming into the 90s. Decidedly not how I wanted to start my old course summer. I found my tee shot in the center left side of the fairway about 80 yards from the hole, now facing the same wind that guided me over the burn 4.5 hours ago. A perfect smooth sand wedge is all I would take. A dozen golf sickos were huddled near the steps off to the left of the green. I crunched it good, like really good. Maybe too good. I imagined the big blue shot tracer that you see on golf broadcasts, painting a tidy draw from right to left. At the worst, this thing was going to fly the hole by 10 yards and leave me a putt for birdie. Hell yeah, I told myself. Give these spectators something to talk about. Donk. What the hell was that? Everyone within a half mile would have heard it. The sound splintered the air conspicuously close to when my ball should have landed on the green. But it happened way over there, a full 30 yards to the left, over by the R&A clubhouse. The early platforms of Open Championship bleachers were being set up, and around them stood a ring of fencing. "Hey-o!" shouted the huddle of players standing at the edge of the clubhouse. Their reaction broke the calm of the night even further. I guess that was my golf ball. Crunching it apparently meant a pull draw through the wind that flew the full sand wedge number. My ball landed in the center of the R&A parking lot. It's one thing to nearly hit someone on the course because you've hopefully forewarned them. It's another thing to send a pellet over their heads with no warning. It's another thing altogether to do it on the old course, nearly sniping the R&A clubhouse in the process. You only get so many chances to play this hole, and it's just begging for a birdie. 357 yards, the widest fairway in the world. You should be able to hit this green wearing a blindfold. I tucked my hail between my legs and walked toward the donk. When I met them, they were surprisingly giddy, not normally the vibe of golfers who recently took on shrapnel. They were laughing because they had seen something absurd. The donk was my ball colliding with a steel pipe atop the construction fencing. During any other week, the shot might have ended up on the road, bouncing across the street, right up onto the front doors of the R&A Museum. But the way they described it, the ball moved with purpose. There's one fly in there. The way they described it, the ball moved with a purpose, seemingly akin to Michael Jordan's fateful ace in Space Jam, controlled by Bugs Bunny's super magnet. It caromed off the steel pipe, bounced between them, then kicked back in bounds via one of those famous stone steps. It might have hit the clubhouse, but they weren't sure. But just as they grasped what had happened, they caught sight of it rolling onto the green 20 feet from the hole. I whipped around to find Laurie bending over on the green. "Callaway 2, he called out. "Callaway 2, indeed. You're super lucky," one of my new friends said. "You think?" 2 putts and about 6 apologies later, it was an early contender for the sleaziest par of my summer, and among the sleaziest of my life. But it helped polish off an 88 that I will think about forever. It wasn't until late that night, after beers with Laurie at the 1-under bar, that I fully appreciated the cyclical nature of my round. It began with an obnoxious gust that set my ball skipping over the burn and ended with an equally despicable rebound from the parking lot. 2 greens in regulation, 2 fours on the scorecard. Had our match still been alive, I'm not sure my conscience would have survived. Sports writing cliches bubbled up in my head once Laurie dropped me off that night. Endless ink has been spilled about teams of destiny bound together in response to hardship. How else would we explain the whims of randomness here on Earth? It was hard to avoid the thought. 2 of the most ridiculous bounces of my golfing life took place 300 yards from each other, one day before the course would close for the Open and just 4 days after Bash had passed. Right at the goofiest intersection on the planet, like some sort of course correction back toward neutral, just when things were feeling bleak. 2 pars that should have been double bogeys. Coincidence, surely. Unless it wasn't, and I loved not knowing. All right.
That thinks that Bash is somewhere aware that you are sitting here now instead of doing whatever it was you were doing out there with the sloppy work as an accomplished author.
Yes, I would agree with you there. It always takes way longer than you think to read it all.
It's a good story.
Thanks for bearing with me.
But now this is your chance to get the inside scoop on everything golf, or if you want to ask Sean, you found what he was looking for.
Yeah. Or you. You're up here too. You can answer questions.
Well, I've been asking questions, and I got some if it gets too quiet, but let's see what they have to say, and get going. Come on, nobody's shy.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, it's a 2-parter. One, what do you think the rest of Tiger Woods' career looks like?
Great question.
And who is going to fill his shoes as somebody to make golf interesting for the non-golfer?
Yeah. Great question. What's Tiger gonna do? I wish he was more open with his plans. He's not a very open dude. I think Tiger is going to be his son's coach in like a very hands-on way. He kind of already is, and his son, I hope, appreciates having the greatest golfer who ever lived be his coach. I think he is. It breaks a lot of people's hearts because he was this incredible champion, and his way down has not been as elegant as a lot of people in sport. And so he will continue to play the Masters every year, so long as his body is up for it, and like maybe a couple of the tournaments that you would watch on TV. But I don't see him playing a lot, and I don't see him playing the Champions Tour, which, in his sake, like for his sake, you can ride a golf cart and play. You don't have to walk. Like his lower body is beaten up. So yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer on that. Besides, he's extremely involved in the future of the PGA Tour. He's like the chairman of like 3 different boards, and right now the tour is kind of working towards what it wants its future to really be. So I would say what Tiger will do is he will craft the future of the tour structurally in a way that he has the best say in the room. Like what you see on the PGA Tour in 5 years will be part of the work that Tiger's doing right now. And I think that's pretty important. He'll be a course designer. I just don't think he's going to do a lot of it playing, which certainly makes people sad because, I mean, he is one of the greatest like sporting geniuses, I think, at a very tricky sport that we've ever seen. Who will make golf as interesting to the non-golfer as him? I think on the men's game we're pretty tapped out. Like what Tiger was a military-raised, black, Asian, like hit it further than everyone else, want to be a super athlete golfer. Like I don't know how many more boxes you can check in terms of like bringing something that isn't old, rich, white, male, which is what the sport has been dominated by forever. So I would look in the direction of the women's game, frankly. And my truest answer on that front, the best player in the women's game, her name is Nelly Korda. She's not as interested in maybe shifting the sport as much as we'd like to see maybe from our sporting icons. She was raised in this is more information than you asked for, but it's what I think of is her dad was a brilliant tennis player, but her dad had like steroid allegations and kind of just like lost a bit of his reputation. And he has kind of kept Nelly like really quartered off as much as possible from sharing herself. And she, in 2024, had one of the greatest seasons that we've ever seen any golfer have, male or female. And she didn't want to get wrapped up in it, didn't want to share what she was really going through, didn't want to talk about it that much. And I think what you're asking for is someone who will connect with non-golfers, is someone that has to be willing to share themselves, has to be willing to go there and say, like, I'm winning like crazy, this is what it's doing to me. And she struggles to do that. It's not an easy thing by any means, but I think that's what it takes, is someone who's ready to go there. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Katie.
So as a journalist, you're obviously writing a lot, writing every day. So I'm curious how the process of writing a book really compared to the work that you do for your job, and what was challenging about that, and taking on that kind of.
It was the challenging part was doing them both at the same time. If I would do it over again, I would take book leave, and I don't even know if my bosses would have approved that. But that's what a lot of people do to finish a book, is to take time away from their job to actually do it. I had like 4 months to write it, and I probably took 4.5. But the biggest struggle was to have golf.com from 8 until 4, try to be healthy from 4 until 7, and then write the book from 7 until 11. And to do that 6 days out of 7, probably. Over that 4, this is a first world problem, to have a fun assignment, to write about yourself. Like these are good things to have, but the way I went about it, I will be honest, like I got very depressed like towards the end, because I'm like, I'm not gonna hit deadline, I'm not hanging out with my friends, I'm probably not eating healthy, I had put a little too much on my plate to make it happen. And then the process of doing it, look, I'm a little bit of can get a little lazy with deadlines at times, and just got back to the end of the deadline time, and it was like, okay, you started with a goal, 90,000 words, you got 90 days, you got to do 1,000 words a day. And if you skip a day, then you got to do more the next day. And if you skip 7 days to go to the Masters, well, buddy, you got to catch up. So at the end of it, I was basically doing 2,000 words an evening. And I told students this week, it's like, you don't want to be in a place where you're playing catch up like that, and then you don't give yourself the chance to edit and be a good self-editor. Because you can't hand in crap to the editor and say, hey, make this better. So the process was daunting. Don't let it, if you guys want to write a book, like do not let that deceive you. But I think the trickiest part was just not giving myself enough time. And the crappiest thing about the book industry is that you hand it in, and then I don't think my editor looked at it for like 3 months. So you could have spent way more time doing it. Publishing can be like that, unfortunately.
And you had to work in time to have a few sips of tenants.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and then go back.
Well, I will say there's this old adage of like, you can write intoxicated, but you can edit. You need to edit sober. So I did like get into this habit of like, okay, you can have like 2 fingers of whiskey, or you can have like 1.5 glasses of wine as you read or write. Excuse me. And so yeah, that probably wasn't always helping. Sometimes it was, but it was like a little treat that I would give myself. Like, okay, you can have a glass of wine, and then you gotta get 2,000 words on paper.
Well, and I was reading the book. I mean, living your life, doing stuff, taking notes for the book, and then having to sit back and file copy
Yeah.
on a 6-hour different deadline.
So that's an important part of this process so I was writing for golf.com on a probably 3 times a week basis from Scotland. And that all was my pitch to the bosses. I did not tell them I'm going over there to write a book. I don't think I really knew that I was, maybe till halfway through the summer. But the process of writing for the website gave me archival notes of what I did that summer. I did some note taking invariably throughout the summer, and then I just used these cameras in our pocket at all times, and I still have like dumb photos that lead to one detail in one sentence in one paragraph in the book, but it's somewhere in some photo on my phone. That like is its own way of kind of archiving your summer, so that when you get to January and you got to write about it, you can remember it a little more vividly.
I think that's a great tip. I hope the kids at your class
Yeah.
are getting that.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Every photo that you take has a timestamp, and so when I am covering golf tournaments, and I'm trying to remember the time between John Rahm's birdie and Scotty Scheffler's birdie, I just take a screenshot on my phone. It's like, oh, that was 3:47. Okay, that one was at 3:59, and that information is lost on, or how you get that information is lost on the reader, but it's oftentimes a nice detail to have.
Now, you sort of touched on it answering the Tiger Woods question, but I saw somewhere that you wrote or you answered somebody how everybody's chasing the same story, or everybody's talking to the same superstar who just nailed this or that, and that the star, the golfer, gets pretty sick of it. They're being asked the same questions. Viewers or listeners get kind of tired of it because there's nothing new, and you said that they're perhaps ignoring or overlooking developments that should be covered, or
Yeah.
emerging golfers
I
that
think
should be
that
paid
is-
attention to.
I've been doing the same job sort of for 11 years now, and everyone is like, wow, that's crazy. But I think this is a sport that you can do it in, because the tournament last week had 144 players in it, which means, of course, 144 personal stories, but 144 sets of parents, maybe 120 wives and girlfriends and partners, and there is always an angle through all those different little, I guess, ways into their ecosystem helps tell a story in a different way. One of the most fun ways, and I did it a few times in the book, is just like, you can watch someone win a golf tournament like over the shoulder of their family, and man, they lose their freaking mind, right? In the same way my family would have if I was winning a golf tournament. And telling the story through their eyes or over their shoulder is just a really easy way to get to what matters within that family. And every one of those families is different. A lot of those families have had like bad tears, like sad tears on the come up to that exact moment. And when it's in a playoff or when it's in contention, like, you don't know if that family's gonna have a night of celebration or a night of, dang, we were so close. And just the emotion that is embedded in those moments is, like, I can't sit courtside with Giannis's wife, right?
I was just gonna ask.
If you will, but I can walk alongside Jordan Spieth's wife and even like talk to her. Like, golf does that, and I don't know if another sport really has that.
I was going to ask if that's part of the appeal, because you're
For
not
sure.
in the press box up here in some stadium. You're
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
down there in
yes.
it, and I think just the other thing is, like, it's just so individual. Like, they each have their different sets of goals and what they determine to be fair expectations, and a lot of them, if they win one tournament in their career at the PGA Tour level, they are set. in not necessarily financially, but like they've checked that box. And so yeah, I get to as a part of the job, I get to watch a lot of humans check some of their most important boxes. And again, it's all just it's all emotion that if you're observant and you know how to kind of get in there, you can tell a story that not everyone, it's not always shown on the CBS broadcast during the winner's interview. Like, not to keep rambling about it, but for people in here who watch golf tournaments, they look really similar. The putt goes in, then there is a 2-minute interview with one of two women, Amanda Balionis or her counterpart at NBC. And then it goes back to Jim Nantz, and then they're off to whatever's next on the broadcast. Like, that is probably your experience with pro golf. And that's not that deep. That's surface level stuff. And luckily, in my sport, my job, you can get a couple different layers beneath that because you're there watching it happen in front of you.
Good. Other questions?
Michael.
You talked about it a little bit in your book about LIV and kind of how that shook up the golf world. It's been some years since the creation of LIV. It seems like didn't really plan out as well, especially with the talks of PIF and PGA and contracting brought up now. What do you think about the PGA, about the organization as a whole, was able to withstand a new competitor coming in?
Well, they're in a pretty good spot now.
Well, yeah.
But it's been a roller coaster for a governing body that had never been pushed like that before. Its leadership fumbled the bag a few different times. It has a new leadership now that comes from the NFL, comes from really big money. They're probably going to take it on a future that is going to be more profitable. But yeah, they withstand it a bunch of body blows. I mean, Phil Mickelson's truly one of the most famous golfers and athletes who ever lived. And he decided, I'd like to have $200 million and I'm just gonna go chase my own thing. But he got like probably 15 other very relevant people to go with him. If you did that again to the PGA Tour today, it maybe would all crumble. So I don't know if that even answers your question as much as like in June of 2022, I was very worried for the PGA Tour. In June of 2023, I was told that they were coming together. In June of 24, it started to look like LIV might not have much of a future. And now in June of 25, it's like, okay, the tour is taking off again. I am so annoyed that it continues to think about it differently every 12 months, but it's been my world. And I will say, that is part of what made my summer so doable, is you had this kind of chaotic thing happening in the game while I was trying to understand the sport at its core, what's great about it, what its roots look like, the home of golf. And at the same time, you have the elite 0.01% just chasing money. That's just kind of, the difference between that was just so apparent like every single day.
That was one of the things I liked about the book when I was reading it, was that you didn't pull any punches about the way
I think
you
I
were.
did.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you did.
That's good. It's good to
Level.
hear. Yeah, there was a little bit of there's a trickiness. Golf.com is one of the biggest brands in the sport, and there are times when we will write things that I know will piss people off, and you have to kind of tiptoe around it. And then at this point, I'm like, well, no, Golf.com is not publishing this book. Sean Zak is, and will you be ashamed if you pull certain punches 6 years from now? I had this 5-year vague idea in my mind where it's like, I want this book to stand up in 5 years, and I want to be able to read it in 5 years. And I was listening to it on the car ride up today to remind myself a little bit of what I wrote, but also it felt good that it stood up as I was hearing it today. And what stand up means, it's something different to me than it maybe would to you guys, but it still felt relevant, and it still felt that if you read it tomorrow, you were getting a lot of information that you needed, and you wouldn't be really deceived by what I was kind of going through at the time.
Good job. There was a arm in the back, hand raised.
A couple questions, if I may. Okay. Several months ago, Justin Thomas commented about the lack of personality
Yeah,
among golfers out there, probably excluding Bryson DeChambeau.
sure.
And was very, very involved with the fans. What are your thoughts on that?
I loved it.
The lack of personality. And secondly, above and beyond your journalism, what were your ambitions to play the game of golf today and in the future?
All right, good question. JT and the personality thing. So Justin Thomas, for people who don't know, is a well-known golfer. He takes selfies with Brunswick, and he's going to play in the Ryder Cup next week. He's kind of a pivotal role player in the future of the PGA Tour, and in January he sent a memo to his fellow PGA Tour members saying, "All right, guys, we are now owners because we own the tour as a collective. We need to be active owners. We need to lean in to interviews in the middle of fairways during a broadcast. We need to lean in areas where we have not leaned in the past, show who we are and show people why this is the best tour in the world. Because I don't feel like you guys have been doing that." And I completely agree with JT. I texted him. That was fantastic. He didn't text me back, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. I talked to him about it a couple months later, and it struck a chord with me because part of my job is trying to get these guys to show their personality. To your question earlier about, or my answer about Nelly not always being willing to go there, it's completely her right to not. But it leaves people like yourself probably wanting more. And for better or worse, this is the transaction. Your eyeballs watching television creates a value in the media rights, which helps fund the tour, right? That's almost the exact order of operations here. And essentially, you can take your eyeballs anywhere. Amazon, Netflix, football, basketball. Golf is at some level a niche sport. It's competing with tennis, it's competing with F1. It goes on the tour just like those two sports do. What's keeping you from going in a different direction from golf? So anyway, rambling, but the point is, love that JT did that, and it struck a chord with some players. I've talked to players about leaning in, and some of them aren't interested, and I think it's just a little too bad because the product is something that they collectively own an equity stake in, and if they can't kind of see the meaning to all that, it makes me want to not tell stories about them, for better or worse. I do think they're coming around. There's a little bit more of an understanding from the governing body of the PGA Tour to just keep putting the mic in front of them, just keep forcing it to it, and if you get them 4 times out of 10, that's maybe 2 times more than you would have 3 years ago. So second question was about where I want to go, or what playing the game, what I want to achieve. I always want to play better. I'm a 7 handicap, which means I can break 80 a couple times in the summer and might screw up and not break 90. So I would like to do better at that. I'm excited. My brother has a little girl who has this plastic set of golf clubs that she doesn't realize that they're golf clubs. But like once a week, every week, she just grabs it and drags it along the sidewalk behind her, and I get those videos. And so, I think it'll be really fun for me to connect with her if she wants to do that, or to make it maybe a little bit more part of my brother's world. I think stuff like that, my grandpa kind of gave me the sport and skipped a generation. Like, I don't think, my dad hasn't played golf in years. If I force him to, maybe he would. He likes to call himself the birdie man because he made 1 birdie 1 time. That's ridiculous, but that wouldn't surprise anyone. But yeah, I literally, my folks came to Chicago to visit me recently, and I live right next to a driving range, and it has a mini golf course next to it, and my dad beat me, unfortunately. But then we went and we watched golfers take swings in the driving range for a few minutes, and it dawned on me, I was like, Mom, you've literally never seen me swing a golf club, ever. I haven't been doing this for a long time. And she goes, yeah, that's right. Okay. But anyway, I think making a little bit more part of my family is my very long-winded answer to that. Yeah. All right. Keith, did you have one?
Yeah. Would a pro golfer shoot 22 under par and win the John Deere Classic, or shoot 2 under and win the US Open?
What would I rather?
What would the pro golfers, do they take
Oh,
extra pride
for sure.
in it's
Absolutely.
more than money?
Yeah, so I think pro golfers, the dominant majority of them just play for money. And that might be dismaying in some way because I don't think Jordan Love plays football for money. You know, I think a lot of NFL players are trying to win that Super Bowl. And a lot of pro golfers are playing for pay, which is great. Of course they want to win, but
Now, why are those courses so tough that they have US Open on and British Open?
everything's just cranked to 11. I mean, I got the chance to play Oakmont, this course in Pittsburgh ahead of the US Open this year. And the guy who won the tournament shot 1 under over the course of 4 rounds. They crank it up even more, but I got to play it a month prior, and it's just rough that you've never hit out of before, greens that you've never putted on before. I'm also not that good, so it all complicates that. But to answer your question, there is a pride at the highest level, maybe the top 30 guys who make so much money that they don't even really pay for it or play for it. The top 30 guys who are trying to win as many tournaments as they possibly can, they would burn Horseshoe Bay to the ground with their skill. But if they go down to Whistling Straits and the wind is up and the course is cranked up and the winning score is 5 under, there's a lot more pride that they feel from that because it just tests skills in which you don't get tested at all. So, yeah.
Are you liking teaching?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely liking it. The class I have this semester is definitely more interested in like the subject matter, which is great. The biggest struggle at times is just getting them to laugh at my jokes. Truly. You guys are doing a great job of that. They do not. You know, but it's one big massive reminder of like who I was at 19. And on Monday this week, I asked them to tell me what they remembered from an interview that they were supposed to listen to over the weekend. And like a quarter of the class had done it, and I was dismayed by that. But on the way home, I received an email from a student from the previous semester who said, "Mr. Zak, I just want to let you know I got this job, and you kind of reminded me like why I wanted to do this." And it's like, okay, so that don't get dismayed by like 19-year-olds who just don't want to do the work. You'll fill up your cup by the 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 who are like trying to follow in your footsteps. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
Nathan.
Yeah, you mentioned when you're watching TV, sometimes tournaments all blend together, they feel similar. I'm sure you've been to so many different courses, tournaments. Is there any place or non-major tournament that you think is a elevated experience from a spectator?
Yeah, good question. The tournament in LA, it's called the Genesis Invitational, is every February. It is the week after the Super Bowl. And it's the week after the Waste Management Phoenix Open. So if anyone knows what that is, it is this like fraternistic chaos drinking spree party. And then Genesis, the week later, is in Beverly Hills. Maybe I'm just describing why I like it because I get to go to Beverly Hills with an expense account and just like live in the hills for a week. But the course is Riviera Country Club. It's one of the best courses in the world. It's actually, you guys will see it if you watch the Olympics in a couple years. The Olympics will be hosted at that golf course, the LA Olympics. And the reason why I like that spot so much, Nate, is there's a hill behind the 18th green that sits beneath the clubhouse, and it gets basked in sunshine at like 5 p.m. And tournament rounds, like the end of the first or second round at that time, are just walking up 18 at that moment. And there's not so many people there. It's not the drinking thing that they do in Phoenix. Like, It's not this crazy. It's just calm, appreciative, great course, great field, great vibe tournament that I have been lucky to get to a couple times. And so I don't know if you were asking for any purpose, but if you have a chance to schedule your vacations around a golf tournament, LA and that one is a really good one.
Anyone else? You did a great job.
Awesome.